All right, it's me time. Scott Sloan back on a big one, 700 WLW on this rainy midweek day. And we are jam-packed with stuff. Starting kind of where we left off yesterday regarding Ohio's own version of the anti-transgender bathroom bill. As you know, it's all popping in North Carolina regarding Target stores and the pushback with them. The American Family Association has some 500,000+ people signing a petition saying they'll never set foot in a Target store unless, of course, they're driving by and go, well, I need diapers, and they have a Starbucks in there. And at that point, you probably would swallow, well, just as once. Which I tend to scoff at some of those boycotts because then there's the equal and opposing force of people who think it's good law and will do all their shopping at Target, and it's, to me, much ado over nothing. Representative John Becker of Union Township is crafting a proposal here in Ohio that, according to him, says he wants to protect Ohioans from sexual predators posing as transgender people to gain access to women's bathrooms because, after all, we don't want people, no matter what sexual orientation they are, to molest other individuals. His concern, according to his interview with Cincinnati.com, is sexual predators posing as transgender people to gain access to women's facilities. Is this the truth, or is it in a broader context? And we've invited him to the show. Well, hopefully we'll get him on in the next few days. But we do have Shawn Jeffers. Shawn is local organizer of the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. And Shawn, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well today. How are you, Scott?
Everything's good. Thanks for coming on again. I appreciate it. When you hear that, you go, hey, listen, this is not about transgender people. This is about sexual predators. The big question is how many transgender people are out there molesting kids as a percent? Because I'm sure there's a percentage, but is the percentage of pedophiles any less or greater than the adult population as a whole?
Yeah, so I think as your intro kind of hit on, is that, we already have laws on the books against sexual predators. And the state legislature has made laws about sexual predators not being able to live within schools and different things. And so they've not said anything about sexual predators in public bathrooms. Instead, I think what they've chosen to do is try and demonize LGBTQ individuals, particularly transgender individuals, and said that they are more likely to be predators when the statistics just don't pan that out, and there's been no cases of trans individuals ever being caught, trying to molest an individual in a bathroom.
Yeah, and somebody sent me an article yesterday. I forget where it's from, but there was I think the headline, there were about 20 cases where someone was dressed as the sex they weren't, let's put it that way, in order to, I don't know, either gain access to a bathroom or something. And I'm sure, you can find that number of people, but I counter that and I go, I guess the way I look at it is this, is largely the same people who say that more gun laws aren't going to stop gun violence. I would counter by saying, so are bathroom laws going to stop rapes? So it's the same answer.
Right. And I think you and I both know, many women in our lives who have, at sporting events or concerts or other things, have just said, the women's room is way too long.
Right.
I'm going to the men's room just to go to the bathroom, because that's what people need to do, right? They just need to release themselves and get back to whatever they're doing with their days. And I think sometimes we, obsess over the wrong things. And it's a concern, I think, for us. And then I think it starts to not only happen in public, but then it kind of trickles down, and our students see these things and fear that they're more unsafe in schools, that they're more, targeted in schools because of these reports that are happening.
Yeah, that seems to be the bigger problem, right? I mean, we saw to a degree what happened to Leila Alcorn, although that was largely parental. But some of these cases, we had the young lady in Fairfield who, seemingly she's straight, but she was labeled as homosexual. I mean, to me, it seems like the bulk of the abuse is towards people who are transgendered or gay or lesbian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm not sure if you're familiar, but the state legislature is right now considering not just the bathroom bill, but there's also HB 425, House Bill 425, that Representative Hayes submitted, which is basically the Student Religious Expression Act, and saying that students can express themselves at any time of the day, in class, before school, after school, with their religious values in school. And so this bill was passed by the House, and it's now being considered by the Senate. And what Representative Hayes said is this is to clarify school and educators' roles, but the language is so broad and so vague that it could lead just to the opposite, of leading to more confusion over what are the school's role and how do they protect students or make students feel safe in school?
Well, see, I disagree with you slightly on that, Shawn. I'm looking at the bill, looked at it this morning.
Yeah.
First of all, the bulk of it deals with, typical legislation, right? There's like 7,000 lines, and 600 of it deal with reporting and what constitutes a school and all this other noise. But in reading, it says, first of all, we absolutely, there's no establishment of religion here and violating that clause of the Constitution. But it says that they will allow for a moment of silence each school day for prayer, reflection, or meditation upon a moral, philosophical, or patriotic theme. No Board of Education, school, or employee of the school district shall require a pupil to participate in the moment of silence. Which then it's not much of a moment of silence, I guess, if you have people going, well, so why draft a law in the first place? But I think the part you're referring to talks about the Ohio Student Liberties, Religious Liberties Act of 2016, that religious expression includes prayer, religious gatherings, distribution of written materials or literature of religious nature, any other activity of a religious nature, including wearing symbolic clothing or expression of a religious viewpoint, provided that the activity is not obscene, vulgar, offensively lewd, or indecent. Doesn't that cover the gay bashing or the gay, lesbian, transgender bashing?
So I think it's that last part there,
right,
Scott, is the concern because so I'll give you an example. So a few years ago, the Ohio General Assembly passed a law saying all schools across the state of Ohio have to have an anti-bullying bill in place. Mm-hmm. Seemingly a good law. And, and I think, but most schools adopted a policy that essentially just said bullying is bad. And didn't really list out the protected groups that are covered under this clause or really list out any more details. And so because it was so broad, oftentimes staff didn't know how to enforce it because they were worried that if they enforced it, they maybe, so I think what we've been talking about through GLSEN is like, how do we help schools? And Cincinnati Public Schools was a leader in this a few years ago that passed a fully enumerated anti-bullying bill or listed out all the protected groups. And so without similar kind of clarity, we're getting into the same thing because I've never walked up to somebody or I've never seen a situation where somebody has walked up to somebody and self-identified as a bully and said, I'm here to bully you, right? Like that's what happens.
Right, you just do it.
Up to you and they pick on you for something they feel you're vulnerable about or trying to get leverage or power over you. And so if we don't list out those things, and so the same thing happens in this bill is that the protected groups aren't really listed. And even when pushed, Representative Hayes said, well, if it is vague, it'll go to the court. And so it kind of is like, well, why not? Why does it need to go to the court to decide, what is?
Well, because legally that's how it works. Is they craft laws and they're constantly tweaked. And I mean, I look at this and go, okay, I could see if it said, hey, it's all right to call you the F word or the whatever the slur may be. But, it's pretty clear here. They said that, you can wear clothing as long as it's not obscene, vulgar, offensively lewd, or indecent. And I think that meshes a little bit with the Bullying Act. And so, there probably may come a day where there's a court case and some kid says, hey, listen, you know what? I have the religious freedom to say that because, if you're gay or lesbian or transgender, I believe you're going to hell. But is it bullying? And then they'll have to, unfortunately, someone will have to be the poster girl or guy for that. And the courts will sort it out. But that's the way it's always been. It's not perfect, but that's the system.
Right. And I think that is the system. But it's also if the law right now says, that this is what is considered offensive or vulgar or lewd, and being more clear is that, that if it put in protections and say that, towards other religions, towards other sexual orientations and gender identities, if that was more expressed in the bill, then I think there'd be a lot less concern because 3/4 of this bill is already established law. It's not anything new. It's just reinforcing it in a new bill and then adding in some lines that they're so broad and so vague that I think that lack of clarity is a concern because a student could wear a T-shirt that said they think homosexuality is a sin or gay people or trans people are going to hell, and they say it's religiously protected speech. And in the school,
but is that bullying?
I mean, I would say it is. Your act is making it unsafe for another student to be able to learn in their school space, and so it would, I think, be the case of bullying.
I think you're going down a slippery slope there. Now, again, you should probably have the same provision that you should be protected if you're a gay, lesbian, or transgendered student. Shawn Jeffries from Cincinnati chapter GLSEN that gives you every right to wear slogans or sayings on your on your shirt or your clothing, and that should be protected as well. And I think the other aspect here too is listing all the protected groups. It'd probably be easier and save on ink and printing costs to probably just list the groups that are unprotected or not protected by this. I mean, that's the thing, is how do you let everyone's the whole thing's insane, though. I mean, I step back and go, do we is Christianity really under attack in the state of Ohio? And I would have to say not only no, but hell no. And so you have these red herrings that are out there and these talking points, and you're trying to rally people around your flag. And John Becker Lee says, hey, he wants to sit down and talk to Shawn Jeffers and come up to something that's amicable, because he doesn't have hate in his heart, but he wants to protect people who believe in God. And, I think we certainly can all coexist. But I guess the one thing when it comes to the anti-transgender bathroom bill that seems to, I don't know, moving forward or what exactly going on here, one of the things that's brought up is that, and I think I'm looking at a quote here from my buddy Charlie Tassel at CCV. I'm going to plan on having on. It says, hey, if you got the equipment, go to the right room. It's as simple as that. That's where the law should say. And basically, if you're born a man and you have a penis, you go to the men's room. Vagina, you go to the women's restroom. But I guess the thing here, what my problem is, but if you're a man and you're transitioning, let's say Kate Jenner, right? Using that logic, isn't it making it worse? Because if you have someone who has a penis but is dressed as a woman use the men's room, that's going to cause a problem. Whereas the other way seems to be easier. If you're dressed in the role of a woman or a man, and that's who you're identifying, then no one's going to really notice you probably when you use the facilities that are marked for that particular sex. So, outside of doing a penis check, I don't understand what we're doing here.
Right, and I think oftentimes, I'm sure you have a similar experience to me. Like, I've been in hundreds of public restrooms, and rarely has anyone, I don't believe ever, has anyone flashed their genitals at me in a public restroom. Like, it is not something, that, we are checking for. And I think what happens, especially in schools, is that when students are forced to go to a bathroom that they don't identify with, so if they are a trans child and they were born female, transitioning to male, and they are forced to go to the women's room, then what it does is other students doubt the sincerity of their transition, because they well, I thought you were a guy, I thought you were a boy, why aren't you using the boys' room? And so all these questions happen. And so these policies oftentimes are meant to further alienate, and just kind of tell people that gay people and trans people, they're kind of weird, they're kind of different, we don't want to accept them. And so it's giving, I think, cover more than actually addressing any real issues that are out there.
Well, and I think the other thing, too, is that, as I mentioned, is it yesterday, day before, for the first time in history, that the millennial generation is now the biggest living generation in America, surpassing baby boomers. And I think in the next 10 years, my people, the Gen Xers, will be bigger than the baby boomers as they head off and, become extinct, much like Gen Xers and eventually millennials. And the big blue marble keeps spinning. That's how it works. But on that note, I think when you look at this kind of legislation, it tends to target older people who seem to be more traditionalist. And the older you get, the less control you have over things. And there's a fear of change. But America's always changed, and that is the nature of it. Eventually, the both of us, Shawn, me and you, will get older, and we'll fear for some unforeseen boogeyman that's down the pike because we won't understand it, but that's how it's always worked.
Right, and I think the question is for our politicians to hold them accountable, and that when people talk to our politicians, really trying to get at what are the issues here they're trying to solve, because oftentimes behind these issues, they're trying to make people afraid to help either get votes or support or donations, and not really addressing and trying to protect the public good. And so I think when we don't hold our politicians accountable, then we allow them to prey on our fears or our anxieties around these things. And so
well, it's a divisive nature of politics, and I think that's why many people, you see this revolt that's happening and happened again last night, is people are tired of this stuff. When you got a guy like John Becker at Union Township, it says, they go, well, we're doing an anti-transgender bathroom bill because, there are people that are posing as child molesters or the opposite sex to go and molest children in bathrooms, and we got to protect the kids. And then someone goes, hey, there's never been a case ever in Ohio where this has happened. And his retort is, well, we need to step up before it becomes a problem. Well, guess what? It's the same argument that the people who are anti-gun use, because there's this, essentially because it might happen, we need to block this kind of activity so we don't have things that aren't happening in the first place. And so it goes. Hey, Shawn, I got to go, but thanks again. Shawn Jeffers from Glisson, Cincinnati. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, have a good one. Let's get your traffic and